Section 44 of Modern Magic. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynn Thompson. Modern Magic, a practical treatise on the art of conjuring, by Professor Hoffmann. Section 44. Miscellaneous Tricks, Part 11. The birth of flowers. There are 2 or 3 different tricks which go by this name. Of one of them we may dispose in a very few words. It is purely a mechanical trick, having neither ingenuity of construction nor dexterity of manipulation to recommend it. The apparatus consists of a cover A, see Fig. 246, a base C, and an intermediate portion B, connected with A by means of a bayonet catch. C is beforehand partially filled with earth, and in B, the top of which is perforated with small holes, is inserted a natural or artificial plant, or bouquet of flowers. The cover A is placed over B, and the apparatus is ready. The performer, drawing attention to C, pretends to sow some magic seed therein. He then places a cover over it, and pretending to warm it with his hands, commands the seeds to germinate. Releasing the bayonet catch, he removes the cover, and shows the flowers apparently just springing from the earth. In C. In some of the smaller sizes of this apparatus the bayonet catch is dispensed with, the mere pressure of the fingers on the sides of A being sufficient to lift off B with it. The trick which we are about to describe, under the same title, is one of a composite nature, and one which, proceeding from marvel to marvel, produces in good hands a great effect. It is divided into 3 portions: first, the production of a single flower; then of a handsome bouquet; and lastly of a large basket of flowers. The performer comes forward with his wand in one hand, and in the other a little box, in reality quite empty, but containing, as he asserts, magic seeds, capable of producing on an instant the choicest flowers. I will first show you, ladies and gentlemen, their effect in the simplest form. In the hurry of coming here this evening, I omitted to provide a flower for my buttonhole. You will see how easily, by the aid of the magic seed, I can supply the deficiency. What shall it be? Clematis, rose, geranium? Suppose we say a rose. I take a single seed from my box. Here is a rose seed, and place it in my buttonhole. He applies the supposed seed to the buttonhole. I breathe on it to supply the necessary warmth. I wave my wand. Once, twice, thrice. The seed has blossomed, you see, into a handsome rose. The explanation of this pretty little trick is exceedingly simple. The preliminary preparation is made as follows. Through the centre of an artificial rose, without stalk, a short piece, about 10 inches, of thin black elastic is passed, and secured by a knot on the inside of the flower. The other end is passed through the buttonhole from the outside, and thence through an eyelet hole made for the purpose in the breast of the coat, immediately under the buttonhole. The extreme end is looped over a button sewn on the waistcoat about the region of the waistband. The tension of the elastic naturally draws the flower close against the buttonhole, while yet allowing it, when necessary, to be drawn away from it to a distance of several inches. The performer, before coming forward to perform the trick, draws the rose away from the buttonhole, and places it under the left armpit, whence, so long as the arm is kept close to the side, it cannot escape. When he waves his wand, with the words once, twice, thrice, he makes the first motion facing to the right, the second fronting the audience, and the third facing slightly to the left, at the same time striking the buttonhole with the wand, and throwing up the left arm, when the flower, released, instantly springs to the buttonhole, the slight turn to the left completely covering the manner of its appearance. But the trick is not yet over. You see, ladies and gentlemen, that I am not dependent on Covent Garden for a rose for my button–hole. But you will naturally say, "Ah, the magic seed may be all very well for a single flower, but what if you want a complete bouquet?" I hasten to show you that this is equally within my power. Will some one oblige me with the loan of a hat by way of hothouse? Thank you. Here, you observe, is an ordinary drinking–glass. This has meanwhile been placed on the table by the assistant, in which I will drop, haphazard, a pinch of the magic seed. This he does with the left hand, the right being occupied with the hat, and then, with the glass in the left hand, and the hat in the right, comes forward to the audience, requesting a lady spectator to breathe upon the glass, which he immediately afterwards covers with the hat. He now requests the same or another spectator to count 10, to allow the mesmeric influence time to operate, and then, removing the hat, shows a handsome bouquet, natural or artificial, in the glass. Returning the hat, and handing the glass and flowers for inspection, he borrows a silk pocket–handkerchief, or in default of procuring one from the audience, uses one of his own, brought forward by the assistant. Drawing it rope–wise through his hands to show that it is empty, he spreads it before him, holding it by two of its corners. Having exhibited one side of it, he spreads the other, when the shape of something solid is seen to define itself beneath it, and the handkerchief being removed, a large round basket of flowers (see Fig. 247), 10 or more inches in diameter, by 2 deep, is revealed. The reader, with his present knowledge, will probably have already conjectured the mode in which the bouquet is brought into the glass. It is beforehand placed at the left–hand corner of the servante, the stem slanting upwards at the angle of about 45 degrees. When the performer, standing at the left–hand side of the table, drops the imaginary seed into the glass with his left hand, his right, holding the hat, drops for a moment to the level of the table, and clips between the second and third fingers the stem of the bouquet, when, by simply bending the fingers, the bouquet is brought into the hat after the manner of the cannon–ball (see page 305). When the hat is placed over the glass, the bouquet is naturally brought into the latter. We may here mention that there are bouquets of a special and rather ingenious construction, enabling the performer, in the act of producing the bouquet from a hat, in the above or any similar trick, to cause it suddenly to expand to 3 or 4 times its original size. The bouquet is in this case made of artificial flowers, stitched on a framework forming a kind of miniature parasol, with a very short handle. The bouquet, when introduced into the hat, has a slightly conical shape, but the performer, in withdrawing it, puts up the parasol, so to speak, thereby spreading it to 12 or 14 inches diameter. The production of the basket of flowers from the handkerchief is produced by wholly different means, and will require a somewhat minute explanation. In the first place, the flowers are secured to the sides of the basket by silk or wires, so that they cannot fall out, in whatever position the basket is placed. To the basket are attached 2 black silk threads. The one, which we will call A, is about 18 inches in length, and is attached to a button on the performer's waistband, immediately above the front of his left thigh. Obviously, therefore, the basket, if fastened by this thread alone, would hang down loosely in front of the performer's left knee. The second thread, which we will call B, and which is attached to the edge of the basket at a few inches distance from the first, is only 3 or 4 inches in length, and serves to suspend the basket behind the back of the performer, concealed by his coat, until the proper moment for its appearance. For this purpose it has a small loop or ring at the loose end, and this is attached by means of a strong short needle, after the manner shown in Fig. 248 and 249, the latter representing a slightly enlarged view of the attachment, to the waistband of the performer. The needle carries a third thread C, which, passing through the cloth of the trousers, is brought round and attached to the centre button of the waistband, being concealed by the edge of the waistcoat. The modus operandi will now be easily understood. The basket is in the first instance suspended by the thread b. The performer, while spreading the handkerchief before him, ostensibly to show that it is empty, crooks the little finger under the edge of his waistcoat, and pulls c, thereby withdrawing the needle and detaching b. The basket being no longer held back by b, falls, but is compelled by a to swing round in front of the performer, who, while lifting it, still covered by the handkerchief, breaks a, and thus altogether releases it. The object of passing the needle through the cloth of the trousers is that it may not fall forward and be seen when c is pulled. The contrivance last above described is the invention of Robert Houdin, slightly simplified, however, inasmuch as he employed in place of the needle a little wire bolt working on a metal plate attached to the back of the waistcoat, but the principle in either case is precisely the same. The Mysterious Salver. This is a tin tray (see Fig. 250), ornamentally japanned, and of about 12 inches in diameter. There is a space of about 3/4 of an inch between the upper and under surfaces of the tray, at one side of which, under cover of the curled rim, is an opening of about 3 inches in width. Within this opening, so placed as to be within easy reach of the fingers of any person holding the tray, are 2 wire hooks, marked a and b in the figure. On gently pulling hook a, a little hammer c rises up at right angles to the surface of the tray, again falling back by the action of a spring as soon as the pull is relaxed. On pulling b, a similar movement is communicated to a sort of ladle d, sunk in the surface of the tray, and rising up in a direction parallel to that of the little hammer already mentioned. This ladle has a flat tin cover, hinged very loosely upon its outer edge so as to open of its own accord when the ladle passes the perpendicular position, and japanned in such manner as to represent one of a circle of medallions forming part of the pattern of the tray, and therefore little likely to attract attention. If any small article be beforehand placed in the ladle, and c be pulled, the article will naturally be flung out upon the surface of the tray. In practice, however, the salver is always used in conjunction with a little glass tumbler about 3 inches in height, which being placed upon the medallion opposite to that which forms the cover of the ladle, the contents of the latter fall into the glass instead of upon the tray. The salver is generally used somewhat after the following fashion. A little round brass box, say 1 1/2 inch in diameter and 1 inch deep, is handed to the audience, with a request that they will place any small article, such as a coin, a ring, a watch key, in it. All necessary precautions are taken to prevent the performer knowing what the articles in question are, and the box is, for still greater security on this point, wrapped by the performer in a handkerchief, and handed to one of the audience to hold. The reader, with his present knowledge of the little faith that is to be put in the acts of magicians, however apparently straightforward, will readily conjecture that at this point there is a substitution. The performer, apparently wrapping up the box which has just been handed to him, really substitutes another of similar appearance, sewn in one corner of the handkerchief. The latter, which contains 2 or 3 metal buttons, or other objects adapted to cause a rattling when shaken, is so arranged that when the lid is pushed home, a piece of cork within is pressed down upon the buttons, and they are made silent, but if the lid be raised ever so little, and the box shaken, they rattle. This latter is the condition in which the box is wrapped in the handkerchief. The performer, leaving the dummy box, wrapped up as above, with the spectator, retires for a moment in order to fetch the salver. This gives him the opportunity to take the articles out of the box, to note what they are (we will suppose a ring, a florin, and a locket), and place them in the ladle of the salver. The empty box he places in one of his pockets. He now brings forward the glass and salver, together with a paper lamp–shade, similar to those placed over the lights of a billiard–table, wherewith to cover the salver, while the supposed flight of the objects takes place. He first shows that there is nothing in his hands, on the salver, or in the glass, and then places the latter in its proper position, and covers the whole with the paper shade. His assistant holds the salver, using both hands, with the right in such a position as to have control of the hooks A and B. The performer requests the person holding the box to shake it, in order to show that the articles are still there. He then addresses the company to the following effect: "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to remind you of the position of affairs. Some articles, unknown to me, have been placed by yourselves in a box. That box has not been in my possession, even for a moment, but has remained ever since in the hands of the gentleman who is now holding it. Here, as you see, is a little glass," he raises the shade with his left hand, "perfectly empty. I shall now, by virtue of my magic power, order the articles in the box, whatever they may be, to leave the box and fall into this little glass, and I will tell you, by the sound of each as it falls, what the article is. Let us try the experiment. First article, pass." The assistant pulls A, and the little hammer C forthwith strikes the glass, simulating to some extent the sound of a small article falling therein. "That, by the sound, should be a coin. I should say a florin. Hold tight, sir, please. Second article, pass." Again the assistant causes the hammer to strike the glass. "That, ladies and gentlemen, is a ring. You must hold tighter yet, sir, if you mean to defy my power. Third article, pass." This time the assistant pulls B, causing the ladle D to rise, and to shoot out the three articles together into the glass. "That, I should say, was a lady's locket. Fourth article, pass." This is a mere blind, and elicits no response. "Ladies and gentlemen, there were three articles placed in the box, a ring, a florin, and a locket, and you will find that they have now all passed into the glass." He removes the shade, and shows that they have done so. "May I trouble you once more to shake the box?" The repeated injunctions to hold tighter have naturally caused the holder to press the lid home, and the box is therefore silent, corroborating the assertion that the articles have departed. "Now, ladies and gentlemen, having conjured away the contents, I shall now proceed to conjure away the box, but this time, by way of variety, I will do it visibly. Attention!" He takes one corner of the handkerchief with his right hand. "Now, sir, when I say 3, will you please drop the handkerchief? 1, 2, 3." The performer shakes the handkerchief, and pulls it rapidly through his hands till the corner containing the box comes into the left hand, the box having apparently vanished. "The box has gone, you see. But where? That is the question. Pardon me, sir, you have it in your pocket, I think," addressing some elderly gentleman of innocent aspect. With the handkerchief still dangling from his left hand, the performer thrusts the other hand into the waistcoat or breast pocket of the individual in question, and produces from thence the missing box, which he has a moment previously palmed from the pocket. The weak point of this trick, as above performed, is the sound of the hammer on the glass, which is but a poor imitation of that of coins, or the like, falling into it. In some trays the hammer is altogether dispensed with, the performer himself holding the tray, and the necessary sound being produced by the assistant actually dropping a coin into a glass behind the scenes, as near the standing place of the performer as possible. This latter plan is much to be preferred. A further improvement consists in the use, in place of the salver, of a small round table, or guéridon, made on the same principle, without the hammer, and worked by pulling a string from behind the scenes. With a little dexterity the articles may be introduced into the ladle, while in the act of placing the glass upon the table, or of moving the latter to the front of the stage, though it is more usual to do this behind the scenes, and then to bring the table forward, as described in the case of the salver. The trick may be varied by borrowing 4 half–crowns or florins, duly marked, which, being exchanged, and the substitutes placed in the half–crown casket (see page 202), are thence made to pass one by one into the glass. The vanishing die. The effect of this trick, in its simplest shape, is merely to make a die, some 3 inches square, pass through the crown of a hat, and be found inside. The trick in this form is but a poor and transparent affair, but it is sometimes useful as affording a pretext for borrowing a hat which you design to make use of for some other purpose, and it furnishes the germ of 2 or 3 really effective illusions. The apparatus consists of 3 portions: a solid wooden die, generally painted black with white spots, a tin counterpart thereof, fitting loosely over it, and exactly similar in appearance, but with one side open, and an ornamental cover of thin pasteboard (sometimes this is also of tin), fitting in like manner over the hollow die. The trick is worked very much after the manner of the cone recently described. The performer comes forward, having the solid die in one hand, and the cover, with the tin counterpart within it, in the other. Placing these on the table, he borrows 2 hats, which he likewise places on the table, mouth upwards. "Ladies and gentlemen," he commences, "I have here a block of wood." He lets it fall on the floor, the sound sufficiently indicating its solidity, and again picks it up. "And a cover of simple pasteboard." He places the cover over it, as if merely suiting the action to the word, and in again removing it, leaves the tin die over the solid one. If any one would like to examine it, he is perfectly welcome to do so. I have here also 2 hats, borrowed haphazard from the audience, and, as you can all see, perfectly empty, and not prepared in any way. Now I propose to make this solid die." He tosses it carelessly into one of the hats, and again apparently takes it out, but really takes out the hollow shell only, pass right through the crown of one of these hats, and fall into the other. He places the hats one upon the other, mouth to mouth, and the tin shell, with the opening downwards, upon the uppermost. "Here is the die, which I cover thus. Now, at my command, it shall pass downwards through the hat. 1, 2, 3, pass! See, the cover is empty," taking it up with gentle pressure, so as to lift the shell with it, placing both on the end of his wand, proving apparently that the cover is empty. "And here, in the lower hat, is the die. Let us try the experiment again. I will replace the die in the lower hat. 1, 2, 3, pass!" He lifts the cover without pressure, leaving the hollow die on the upper hat. It has obeyed, you see. Once more. 1, 2, 3, pass! Again the cover is empty, and again the die has passed into the lower hat. The die dissolving in a pocket–handkerchief. The trick last described has 2 drawbacks. First, that it is very generally known, and second, that the principle is rather too obvious, the secret being very easily guessed, even by persons not endowed with special sagacity. There is, however, an improved form of the same trick, at which an additional element is introduced, whereby these disadvantages are, to a great extent, removed. The apparatus used is the same as in the last case, with the addition of a coloured handkerchief prepared as follows: 5 square pieces of stout pasteboard, each a shade larger than one side of the solid die, are joined together with hinges of tape or cloth, in the form shown by the dotted lines in Fig. 251. The centre–piece, A, is attached to the middle of the handkerchief, the others being allowed to hang loose upon their respective hinges. A second handkerchief of similar pattern is then laid upon the first, and the edges of the 2 are stitched together all round. The performer having exhibited the solid die and cover, as already explained, and having removed the latter, with the hollow die within it, places it upon the table. Spreading the prepared handkerchief beside it, he places the solid die upon the centre of the handkerchief, and gathering up the four corners of the latter, lifts it, bag fashion, with his left hand, the four loose flaps of pasteboard naturally folding themselves up around the die. He now takes it with his right hand, clipping the solid die within the pasteboard, and turns the whole over as in Fig. 252, thus bringing the die uppermost, with the folds of the handkerchief hanging down around it. He next takes in the left hand a borrowed hat, holding it up for a moment to show that it is empty. Then, turning it mouth upwards, he remarks, "I will place the die here in the hat." Suiting the action to the word, he lowers his hand into the hat, but, as if suddenly bethinking himself, he says, "No, I won't use the hat at all. Perhaps some one will kindly hold the die." And withdrawing his hand, however, he relaxes the pressure of his finger, thereby leaving the solid die in the hat, though as the folded pasteboard retains its cubical shape, the handkerchief still appears to contain the die. Grasping it immediately below the folded shape, he gives the handkerchief in charge to one of the spectators, who is directed to hold it in like manner. The hat he places carelessly upon the table. He now once more lifts the corner with the hollow die, rattling his wand within it to show that it is empty. Again replacing it, he commands the die to pass from the handkerchief under the cover. The person holding the handkerchief is asked if he felt it depart, but he naturally maintains that it is still in the handkerchief. "You are mistaken," says the Professor. "What you see is merely the ghost of the die still clinging to the handkerchief. Allow me." And taking one corner, he requests the owner to drop the handkerchief, which he then shakes out, exhibiting both sides to show that the die has vanished. He then lifts the cover and shows the hollow die, which the spectators take to be the genuine one, and concludes the trick by finally commanding the die thus shown to pass into the hat, which, on being turned over, is found to contain the solid die, while the hollow die is again raised with the cover, and the latter shown apparently empty. The die and orange. The die in this instance is about 3½ inches square. It has the usual ornamental tin or pasteboard cover, but there is an additional item of apparatus employed, a square wooden box, with hinged lid, and of such a size as to contain the die. The effect of the trick is as follows. The die is brought forward in the box, the performer holding the square cover in his other hand. The die being then taken out of the box and placed on the table, the box is shown empty, and the cover placed over the die. The performer, having mysteriously procured an orange from the hair or whiskers of a spectator, drops it into the box, which is then closed. He now asks the spectators, in order to impress the facts on their memory, where they suppose the two articles to be. They naturally answer that they are where they have just seen them placed; or, if they venture to question this, the performer raises the cover and opens the box, and shows that die and orange both remain in statu quo. He now commands the two articles to change places. Lifting the cover, the die is found to have disappeared, the orange having taken its place, and, on opening the box, is seen to contain the die, which is taken out and exhibited on all sides to the company. The die and orange being again covered over, at command change places as often as the company please. The reader will doubtless have conjectured that there are in reality two dice and two oranges. The box, when first brought forward, contains in reality two hollow dice, one within the other. The smaller and innermost (the one which is afterwards taken out and placed under the cover) is placed in the box with its open side towards the hinges, and contains an orange. The performer takes it out, taking care, of course, that the orange does not fall out, and places it, open side downwards, upon the table. The cover is now placed over it, and, if lifted with pressure, lifts the hollow die with it, and reveals the orange. But if lifted by the button on top, so that the sides are not pressed, It leaves the die covering the orange. We now return to the box. This contains a second hollow die, so placed that the open side is upwards, and the box therefore appears to be empty. The lid, however, contains a sixth side, exactly fitting the open space, and thus making the die complete. This movable side is alternately made to form a lining to the lid, or to form part of the die, according as a little button on the lid is moved in one or another direction. Both the true lid and this movable portion of it are lined with looking–glass, so as to show no difference of appearance, whether the box is exhibited empty or as containing the die. When the sixth side is made to form part of the die, the latter may be completely removed from the box, and shown on all its sides without betraying the secret, the orange for the time being remaining enclosed within it. It is a good plan to have a solid die matching those used in the trick, to be, if necessary, substituted and handed round for inspection. If the performer uses a trap table, it has a very good effect to conclude the trick by causing the orange under the cover to fall through the trap, and then, lifting the cover and hollow die together, to show by rattling the wand within that both die and orange have altogether vanished. Section 44.